Oh, man. Paul Kritz with you. It is 11:30 straight down. We are right on time. This is fantastic. I am joined now live in the studio by Terry Supahan from the True North Organizing Network, the executive director of said network, and also Melissa Darnell, who had a very specific role in the subject of our discussion today. We are talking about the graphic novel. It is finally coming out. Now, this has been in the works for a couple of years now, correct? Say something, Terry.
Years.
There you go. A few years. And Melissa, can you hear us on the phone?
Yes, I hear you, and thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited for the conversation.
So first off, who wants to do this? Terry, you want to tackle this one first, or Melissa? I want to throw this out and get the whoever has the expertise on this. Just give folks who might not know anything about this project kind of an overview of the graphic novel, why it's being created, and what you hope to achieve with it.
I'll start, and Melissa, you can fill in all the potholes behind me. But because Melissa was part of this project from the beginning, I and True North came in later. My understanding was that the California Endowment was doing these type of graphic novels and these projects throughout the state of California, and Building Healthy Communities and others were interested in bringing young people together to talk in focus groups about what was important to them and their community and the history of their community. And that's what began to start with young people working with adults and professional writers and graphic artists to produce a really sharp, really amazing piece of work. Melissa, did you want to add to that, please?
Yeah, no, all of what Terry said is true, and I think that the one of the things that I want to emphasize is that when we think of community, right, we see each other in the grocery store, we see each other at stoplights, our kids go to school together, and we often have so many rich, multiple experiences that have brought us to this place, and those maybe are often divergent, right, but we have a linked destiny, like together. Whoever is here in this moment is going to decide collectively, what we're going to do next. And so I am really excited about engaging the target audience for this work, primarily, youth and young adults, which is why the graphic novel format was selected, to really begin to unravel sort of what it means to live in Del Norte County and our associated tribal lands, and what a legacy has brought us to this point, and then really the role of young people with the support of their adult allies to work together to challenge narratives, build relationships of meaning and empathy, and work together to create and implement policies that they have identified for themselves to manifest the community that they want to live in.
So have there been other graphic novels produced in California? By the California Endowment and the effort that you guys have just described?
Yeah, so this is part of a collection of stories that is being published as each one is finished for the 14 Building Healthy Community sites that the California Endowment identified at the beginning of this wonderful experiment to really change the way that we're thinking about investing in communities, from sort of project to place-based, community-led philanthropic support.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That's really interesting. So what is the name? What's the title? What's the title of the... I was looking for the page. I've got the title page that you sent me on Facebook, Melissa, but refresh my memory. What's it called?
Yeah, so the title of our book, and also the book for all of the sites, is How Did We Get Here?
Mm-hmm.
And then, this one is, of course, specific to our place. So it begins, at the beginning of time, because, we really wanted to honor that we are living now in a community that where people have lived, for a long, long time.
So can you tell us? I mean, okay, first off, I've got so many questions. Let's get it. When does it come out?
So we're going to have I'm sorry, I was waiting for you, Terry.
Terry was making hand signals that you were supposed to see.
I thought you'd see them by now, Melissa. I know that it's at the publishers.
Okay, I've heard that as well. But is there a publication date?
Yeah, so it'll be released in mid-January. And we're thinking of, all of the innovative ways that we can do that. Obviously having a printed resource is really important, especially for folks in my generation who like to have something tangible to feel and, holding your hands and things like that. But we're working hard really and strategically also to think about how can this resource be available as it has been intended to youth and young adults. And so, there'll be a QR code that, people will be able to use to access an electronic format. So there'll never be a time when someone who's interested in taking a look at the resource will not be able to access it.
And the electronic version, that's free, if I remember correctly from the press release, right? Anybody interested can, yeah. But I'm like you. I want a copy. I can hold in my hand. That's so. Was this tied in? This might be a question better asked to Ruthie Rhodes. But was this tied in with the work on her book? Then did she use the same sort of? Was that part of her whole research? Was it all one piece? The book that she wrote, the where we came from, how did we get here? The book, the stories of the individuals in Delaware County.
Yeah, Melissa, you probably know that better than any of us.
But I don't want to speak for Ruthie because Ruthie had a sabbatical project that she was working on, through her role at the community college, and then we hired her to work in consultation with multiple stakeholders in the community to help craft sort of the story arc for the graphic novel. Mm-hmm. And while there was a little bit of overlap, sort of in those groups, I think that each of these. Both the book and the graphic novel are sort of standalone pieces, and Del Norte County is extremely fortunate to have such a writer who's available to sort of cross all of these different mediums, from playwriting to now a graphic novel, and the books that she has published over time, either as contributing to anthologies or her recent book that you mentioned, Paul. Ruthie, we're very, I think, fortunate to have her to have that gift.
No, that's fantastic. That's a big name to have a big local name to have come write your graphic novel. Can you explain, just sort of describe the arc of the story in the graphic novel for us?
Yeah. So what happens is there are both fictitious characters and then actual real people who live in our community who are characters as the story unfolds. And there are a group of young people, 5 young people, who are standing on the bridge at Kidtown about to watch the 4th of July parade begin, walking down Front Street. So a lot of the richness from the very beginning of the story comes from familiar places and familiar events that all of us have loved and experienced in our time in the community. And so these young people watch the parade go by, and as they do, they overhear people on the sidewalk talking about one another. They are talking to one another, and they try to make sense of some of the conversation that they're overhearing. They see different floats go by, and that triggers the young people to start talking about what they're seeing and how they're reacting to it, and their own experiences as it relates to some of the floats. So it's so there's a story arc that happens as the story sort of unfolds in that way around the parade, and then it ends in Front Street Park, where Perlita's taco truck is set up, and the young people are then beginning to do some more of the sense making. Well, now that we have been exposed to some of these things, and we're thinking about them, and we're talking to each other in a way that we haven't done before, what might we do together next? So the story is certainly not finished by the time that you get to the last page. It's really, because we know, as I said earlier, that the future isn't written yet for us. So there's a big question mark of excitement, I think, and discovery and hopefulness about, where do we go from here?
Wow. Wow, that's really exciting. I can't wait to read that. And because one of the actual like local people who are in the book is my son Avi, so I'm like right on. And I have to say there were back and forth earlier as we started talking about this that I was going, wow, it's like Terry and Melissa aren't really responding to each other here on the, and sitting here, Melissa, it occurred to me, I look up and Terry's sitting there and I realize I'm listening to you in my headphones and I haven't given him headphones. So
I was straining to hear what Melissa was saying. I could kind of hear.
So that was all of those delays early in this interview. That's totally my fault. So yeah, exactly. He's got headphones on now and he's actually listening to every word you say quite easily. So apologies for that. Oh my gosh. This is an interesting sort of thing because especially in our community, there's a lot of division in our community, almost right down the middle, it seems. And as with Ruthie's play, the musical, This is Crescent City, that sort of focused on digging up the past and the unsavoriness of much of our past in Del Norte County, from the Chinese exclusion to the Yantucket massacre, all of this in our history, and the sort of uncomfortable truths that surround all of that. Have you, either one of you, experienced anything like pushback or reticence or reluctance from the community to sort of face these things as the subject matter of the graphic novel has gotten out into the community?
Paul, I think it's really important for all of us to recognize it's not just Del Norte County, it's throughout our region, it's throughout our country, the division you speak of and the history that's brought us here to talk about. And part of that pushback, I think, from a lot of people is why do we have to dredge up the history? I wasn't around. That wasn't me. That didn't involve me or my immediate family. And I think it's really important, even with the graphic novel, that we have True North leaders involved in trying to make the world a better place and to have more conversations with one another and get to know one another. And there's people in that graphic novel that are depicted on opposite sides of history. And if we don't talk about it, it will stay buried in an ugly way. And the only way that I think things can get better is by lifting them up. And if I have a problem with you should have a right for me to hear that from me and me to hear your response, for you and I as human beings to see one another. And that's what we're hoping. Melissa and I have had many conversations about how we use this once it's actually in our hands in old school waving it around and being able to use it as a tool and start conversations with young people and adults and intergenerationally with a lot of different kinds of folks. How does it make you feel, and what's the story that's in front of us? I think that young people and Ruthie and Melissa and the graphic artists, there's a lot of people who have put some blood, sweat, and tears into trying to put it forward, and I just think it's a great starting place for a lot of us.
And you envision this as being used as a sort of a textbook or educational resource, right?
We certainly hope that the county and the school district and teachers that want to use it as a starting place not only use it as part of their curriculum, but could have other community leaders come in and talk about their perspective, whether they agree with it or not. It's like I said, it's a starting point.
Mm-hmm. And there were pages previewed at the Hmong New Year celebrations this last weekend. Were you in town for that, Melissa?
Oh yes, I even though I don't. My primary residence is no longer in Del Norte County, where we still have our home. I try really hard not to miss Hmong New Year. It's I actually, coming from a logging camp in Southeast Alaska, where I was born and graduated from high school.
Oh wow.
Did not know the history of Hmong people, and it actually, I'm a little bit embarrassed to say, but I've said it enough that I do that. That even in my public school education and through the required history courses at the University of Oregon, where I got my undergraduate degree, and even through my master's program, I did not know of Hmong people. or their role in as our allies in the Vietnam War. And I didn't. I learned about that for the first time when my husband and I relocated to Del Norte County in 2009. And so, in a way, I've spent a lot of time making up for what I wish I would have known or understood early in my life, and reconciling some of those missed opportunities to be exposed to this particular part of the legacy of conflict in our country, and the refugee experience, and all of what that means that you just miss out on when you're geographically isolated growing up. And so participating in Hmong New Year is a really important thing for me, and I certainly would not have missed this opportunity this year, last Saturday, because we did preview pages of the graphic novel, as you said, and some of the history of the Hmong experience is in the graphic novel.
Yeah, exactly, and that's again that seems so fitting too for a novel dealing with these issues to be sort of previewed like this. Because, I mean, that's kind of a microcosm of this whole thing of inclusion. And it's not the same as it used to be when we talk about, melting pot and assimilation. It's not like that anymore. It's more about inclusion. And to have such a vibrant Hmong community in Del Norte County, and to have this whole idea of the graphic novel shared at their New Year, it seemed like a very fitting event and a venue for that idea.
I think that's an incredibly powerful word, inclusion, and what does it mean to people, and where do you go with it? And as this county, as this state, as this country and world becomes more diverse, how are you included in it? How am I included in it? Mm-hmm. And it's a far different word than assimilation or some of those other words we use to define our past.
Yeah. Wow. Anything that you guys would like to add? How can I make sure, and speaking for the listener, that I can get a copy of this when it comes out?
That's all you, Melissa.
Well, so as I mentioned before, there will be electronic copies available. The other, and we do have a targeted distribution plan, so we'll have copies on reserve at the Del Norte County Library, and there'll be other places where anyone at any time will be able to have access. And I'm very grateful to Shane and others at the county library level for making that commitment.
Oh, they're great. They're great.
Don't worry, Paul. We will make sure that those that are featured in the graphic novel, as well as their families and their dads, can
because I was gonna say, because you're just gonna let me. I'll have to read Avi's copy. Is that what you're saying?
No, you get your own copy.
Oh, okay.
We also have, and sort of the details haven't been worked out yet, but we have several hundred copies that will be available for sale in the community for other folks who are interested in having one at home on their bookshelf, or to give away as a gift. And those are going to be, we haven't, I don't think yet figured out exactly what the cost is going to be, but they will be at cost. True North is a nonprofit organization. The graphic novel was birthed by a nonprofit organization, and so there's no profit to be made from selling copies. It'll be just the price of the printing. And so I'm thinking, between $4 and $5 is probably what we're looking at.
Oh, wow.
And we'll make sure that those are, available in some way, and I'll let you know so you can promote it. So, like I said, yes. Folks who are interested in picking up their own copy will be able to do so.
So many these days, graphic novels and things are made into blockbuster films. I was talking about this earlier on. So, not any plans for a Jerry Bruckheimer version of this, but what about a local, either LRT or drama thing at the high school, sort of something like Ruthie did with This Is Crescent City. It's just an idea to throw out there.
That's a great idea. If HBO is listening.
Yeah, there you Netflix. No, HBO, you want Netflix nowadays.
Well, I was just thinking of the graphic novel that's on HBO now that puts race at the center of their questions. So,
oh, wow, yeah. So what's next then for you guys? Is there anything that I haven't asked that you want to get out and make sure that everybody knows?
When we were talking about the word inclusion, I just want to go back to that for a second, Paul, because I've heard professional administrators and educators say a very specific conversation that I'm thinking about, where this educator was saying the world is changing, and I have my children going to as diverse a campus within the school district as possible, because I know it will help them in their future, and it'll help them in their employment when they go to college. No matter who you are, no matter where you are, what your community is. This was this educator telling me for his children's future, he was making sure that they were trying to be in as diverse spaces and in classrooms as possible, because he knew it was better for them.
Wow, yeah, exactly. It's when I was moving up here from the Bay Area, actually, one of the things that somebody said to me was, well, it's not a very diverse group up there in Delaware County, is it? And I was thinking, well, no, it is, actually. You just have this sort of stereotype of it's a logging community up on there, but there's so many different kind of irons in the cultural fire that we have here, and history, and a history that encompasses, it seems to me, all of the triumphs and all of the horrible tragedies of American history at large, kind of written small here in Delaware County as well.
And when we talk about those horrible histories, I mean, it's human beings doing that to human beings. So it doesn't matter if it was 150 years ago or today, or what's the future look like. It is how is my best self coming to this difficult situation?
One thing I often think about is in terms of the history here locally, is how we as a community endeavor to live in the shadow of things like genocide. And it seems this graphic novel is a way that a community could sort of in a healthy way process this tragedy.
That's absolutely correct. Last February, our statewide network, Pico, California, had organized about 20 people to meet with the new governor in Gavin Newsom's office, and they asked me to say a few words to open the conversation. And to tell you the truth, Paul, the graphic novel was right on the top of my forehead and on my lips, because I wanted to talk about the genocide in California and the historic trauma that Native Americans have experienced, but it wasn't the right moment. I only had 2 minutes. And rather than set the tone for an hour-long meeting with a brand new governor, and we want an 8-year relationship, it was like, well, there's places and times to have those kinds of conversations. And a month later, he talked about, as the sitting governor of California, the genocide that had happened in the state. Wow. You have to have difficult conversations, and hopefully you find a way to have them in different places that allow people to lift it up and to find their hardest spot to be able to say their hard words and get to know each other in a better way.
Yeah, wow. Melissa, any last thoughts?
Yeah, I just think, this resource is designed to be really a conversation starter. It's 44 pages long, so it is not representative of the story of every person and every experience, right? And it was the format didn't lend itself to be that way, and that's one of the reasons why we were intentional about including in the printed text some discussion questions at the back to begin to help people think about what they might want to do and how they might want the conversation to continue. And so I'm excited about the opportunity for folks to read it, to find out something that they may not have ever known about before and want to learn more about that thing, or be inspired because they see the historian from the Del Norte County Historical Society in the pages of the graphic novel, to actually go down and visit the Historical Society, which, is beautiful and contains such a deep and meaningful expression of all of the different parts of Del Norte County, or to just talk to their friends in a new or different way, and think with them together about how, like I said originally, we may have multiple diverse experiences that have brought us to this point, but we all live here together now, and our destiny is linked with one another. And so the collective decisions that we make together, we all are going to live with moving forward. And what might those be? The future isn't written yet. And so, the opportunity for young people to be excited about thinking about the ways in which they might contribute to writing that future is really the goal of bringing this resource into existence. And so I'm just anxious to see what's going to emerge from those conversations.
It is. I mean, it's called "How Did We Get Here," but it seems like that title could go on to say, "Where do we go from here?" as well, huh?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you so very much, both of you guys, for coming and or phoning in to get this conversation going. And I know that we've talked about the graphic novel now for a long time, and it always seems like it's just right around the corner. But right now, it is actually right around the corner, right? We're looking at literally right around the corner, mid-January release, and something big will happen for that. So Terry Supahan from the from the True North Organizing Network, executive director, and Melissa Darnell, project manager for this specific project. How did we get here? Thank you so very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Paul.
All right.
Thank you so much for having us, Paul.
Oh, it is. I am so looking forward to this graphic novel.